Welcome to Volume and Vision. Have you ever reached the end of a busy day and wondered where all your time went? You woke up with good intentions. You promised yourself that today would be different. Today you would finally finish that important project, start learning a new skill, exercise, or spend quality time with your family. But somehow, before you even realized it, the day disappeared. Emails demanded your attention. Notifications interrupted your thoughts. Small, unimportant tasks kept stealing your focus. By the time night arrived, you felt exhausted, but strangely, not accomplished. If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. Most people don't have a time problem. They have a focus problem. Imagine two people who both have exactly 24 hours in a day. One finishes meaningful work, learns new skills, stays healthy, enjoys time with loved ones, and still manages to relax. The other spends the same 24 hours feeling rushed, overwhelmed, and constantly behind. The difference isn't intelligence. It isn't talent. It isn't luck. The difference is how they manage three invisible resources that most people ignore: their time, their attention, and their energy. The truth is, productivity isn't about becoming a machine that works from sunrise to midnight. It isn't about filling every minute with work until you're completely burned out. Real productivity is about making room for what truly matters. It's about achieving better results while living a better life. Today's journey is based on the timeless principles from the Productivity Project, transformed into a fresh and practical guide that you can begin using immediately. By the end of this audiobook, you'll discover why staying busy often keeps people from becoming successful. You'll learn how to stop fighting against your brain and start working with it. You'll understand why some people accomplish more in 4 focused hours than others do in 12 distracted ones. Most importantly, you'll leave with practical strategies that can completely change the way you approach every single day. But before we begin, I want you to make one simple promise. Don't just listen. Imagine yourself applying every lesson. Picture your own routine changing. Visualize your mornings becoming calmer, your work becoming more meaningful, and your evenings ending with satisfaction instead of frustration. Because knowledge changes nothing, applied knowledge changes everything. So take a deep breath, put away every distraction for a while, and let's begin. There is an interesting story about a young architect named Daniel. Daniel wasn't lazy. In fact, everyone around him believed he was one of the hardest workers in the company. He arrived before everyone else. He stayed after everyone had gone home. His weekends often disappeared inside unfinished projects. Yet year after year, something strange kept happening. His coworkers, who seemed to work fewer hours than he did, kept receiving promotions. They completed projects faster. They appeared less stressed. And somehow, they still had enough time to travel, read books, exercise, and spend weekends with their families. One evening Daniel finally asked his manager a question that had been bothering him for years. "I'm working harder than ever. Why does it feel like I'm getting less done?" His manager smiled and handed him a blank notebook. "I want you to write down everything you do tomorrow," he said. Everything, everything. The next evening Daniel looked at the notebook. The results shocked him. He had checked his phone 43 times. He had switched between different tasks nearly 70 times. He spent almost 2 hours searching for files, replying to messages that weren't urgent, attending meetings that didn't require his presence, and worrying about problems that never actually happened. Out of a 10-hour workday, only about 3 hours had been spent creating meaningful progress. For the first time, Daniel realized something powerful. He wasn't working. He was reacting. Many of us live exactly like Daniel. We spend our days responding instead of deciding. Every notification becomes an emergency. Every email feels important. Every request from another person immediately becomes our priority. Slowly, without noticing, we surrender control of our day. Then we wonder why we never have enough time. Here's the surprising truth. Time isn't really the problem. Everyone receives exactly the same amount each day. The real question is this: who decides where your attention goes? If the answer is your phone, your inbox, social media, or the endless demands of other people, then your day no longer belongs to you. One of the biggest myths about productivity is the belief that successful people simply work longer. But if you study high performers across different professions, you'll notice something fascinating. They aren't constantly working. They're constantly choosing. They choose what deserves their attention. They choose what can wait. They choose what they should ignore completely. In other words, productivity begins with intentional decisions. Think of your attention like sunlight passing through a magnifying glass. When the sunlight spreads everywhere, nothing happens. But when it concentrates on one tiny point, it becomes powerful enough to start a fire. Your mind works exactly the same way. Scattered attention creates average results. Focused attention creates extraordinary ones. Unfortunately, modern life encourages the exact opposite. Every app competes for your attention. Every platform wants another minute. Every notification promises something urgent. Without realizing it, we train our brains to expect constant interruption. After months or years of living this way, deep concentration starts feeling uncomfortable. Silence feels strange. Working on one thing for an hour feels almost impossible. The problem isn't your intelligence. The problem is that your attention has been divided into thousands of tiny pieces. Imagine trying to fill a bucket using a watering can with hundreds of holes. No matter how much water you pour, very little reaches the bucket. That's what happens when your focus leaks away every few minutes. Now imagine sealing those holes. Suddenly, the same amount of water fills the bucket much faster. Nothing changed except where the water was allowed to flow. Your productivity works exactly the same way. Most people search for secret techniques. They buy expensive planners, download dozens of productivity apps, watch countless motivational videos, but they ignore the simplest question of all. What is the single most important thing I should be doing right now? That one question has changed countless lives. Whenever you feel overwhelmed, stop. Instead of looking at everything on your to-do list, ask yourself, if I could complete only one task today, which one would make the biggest difference? Not the easiest task, not the fastest task, the most valuable one. This simple habit forces your brain to separate movement from progress. Because they're not the same thing. Imagine climbing a ladder as fast as possible. Now imagine discovering that the ladder was leaning against the wrong wall. All that effort suddenly becomes meaningless. Being productive isn't climbing faster. It's making sure you're climbing the right ladder. This idea also changes the way we think about planning. Many people create enormous to-do lists. Every morning, 25 tasks, 30 reminders, endless checkboxes. By lunchtime they're already discouraged. Instead, imagine writing down only 3 major victories for the day. Not everything you could do. Only what truly matters. If you accomplish those 3 important goals, your day becomes successful regardless of how many small tasks remain unfinished. This approach removes unnecessary pressure. Instead of chasing perfection, you begin chasing progress. And progress creates momentum. Momentum creates confidence. Confidence creates consistency. That's how meaningful habits are built. There is another story worth remembering. A music teacher once gave 2 students the exact same assignment. Practice the piano for 1 hour every evening. One student sat at the piano for exactly 60 minutes but kept checking messages, talking to family members, and wandering around the room. The second student practiced for only 40 minutes. But during those 40 minutes, nothing else existed. No phone, no conversations, no distractions. After 6 months, the difference between them was astonishing. The second student had improved far more despite practicing less. The teacher explained why. The clock doesn't measure focus. That sentence contains a lesson far bigger than music. Hours don't create excellence. Attention does. The quality of your focus determines the quality of your results. From today onward, stop asking yourself, how many hours did I work? Instead ask, how many hours was I fully present? Those 2 answers are rarely the same. Here's a challenge for tomorrow. Before touching your phone in the morning, before opening social media, before checking emails, sit quietly for 5 minutes. Take out a notebook. Write down the 3 outcomes that would make today successful. Keep that list where you can see it. Every time you become distracted, return to those 3 priorities. You'll be amazed at how quickly your mind begins to filter out unnecessary noise. Because clarity isn't something you find. It's something you create. And every extraordinary life begins with one ordinary decision made intentionally. The decision to stop letting the world control your attention. And start taking ownership of it yourself. The moment you master that decision, everything else becomes easier. And beginning. As the first rays of sunlight pass through your window tomorrow morning, you'll have a choice. You can begin your day the way most people do, reacting to whatever appears on your screen. Or you can begin with intention. That single decision may seem small, but over weeks and months it creates two completely different lives. Think about an airplane leaving New York for London. If the pilot changes the direction by just 1 or 2 degrees at takeoff, the passengers might not notice anything unusual. The journey feels exactly the same. But after thousands of miles, that tiny change leads to a completely different destination. Your daily habits work in exactly the same way. A 5-minute planning session may not seem life-changing today. Choosing one important task instead of 3 urgent but meaningless ones may not feel extraordinary. Reading 10 pages instead of scrolling social media for 20 minutes doesn't look impressive. Yet these tiny choices quietly shape your future. Success is rarely created by dramatic moments. It's built through ordinary decisions repeated consistently. This brings us to one of the biggest enemies of productivity: the illusion of multitasking. For years, people believed that the ability to juggle multiple tasks at once was a sign of intelligence. Job descriptions praised it, companies rewarded it, people proudly said, "I'm great at multitasking." But here's the uncomfortable truth. Your brain isn't multitasking, it's task switching. And every switch has a hidden cost. Imagine you're reading an exciting novel. Just as you reach the most suspenseful chapter, someone interrupts you with a phone call. After the call, you return to the book. Can you continue immediately? Probably not. You spend a few moments remembering where you left off. Who was speaking? What just happened? What was the main idea? Your brain needs time to reconnect. Now imagine repeating that interruption every 5 minutes throughout your workday. That's exactly what constant notifications do. Every interruption forces your brain to rebuild its focus. Those few seconds may not seem important, but hundreds of interruptions create hours of lost productivity every week. Researchers have discovered something fascinating about attention. Every time you leave an important task, a small part of your mind continues thinking about it even while you're doing something else. Psychologists sometimes call this attention residue. Imagine carrying 5 backpacks at once. Each backpack isn't heavy by itself, but together they slow you down. Unfinished tasks create mental backpacks. The more often you switch between activities, the more attention remains trapped behind. That's why you sometimes finish an entire day feeling mentally exhausted even though you haven't completed much meaningful work. Your brain wasn't working deeply. It was constantly changing direction. Consider another example. Meet Sophia. Sophia worked as a freelance graphic designer. Her mornings looked productive. She answered emails, checked messages, edited a design, responded to clients, opened another project, read industry news, answered another notification. Everything seemed busy, everything seemed important, but every evening she felt disappointed. Her biggest projects barely moved forward. One weekend she decided to try something different. She turned off every notification, closed every browser tab except the one she actually needed, placed her phone in another room. Then she worked on one project without interruption for 90 minutes. The experience surprised her. Ideas came faster. Problems became easier to solve. She noticed details she had previously overlooked. Most importantly, she finished more meaningful work in those 90 focused minutes than she normally completed in an entire morning. Nothing magical had happened. She simply stopped asking her brain to perform an impossible task. The lesson is simple. Your brain loves simplicity. It loves finishing one thing before beginning another. It loves clarity. Unfortunately, modern technology profits from confusion. Every app is designed to capture your attention. Bright colors, endless scrolling, notifications, breaking news, recommended videos, suggested posts, all carefully engineered to keep your eyes on the screen for just a little longer. Remember, attention has become one of the world's most valuable currencies. If someone controls your attention, they influence your decisions, your habits, even your future. That's why protecting your focus isn't just about productivity. It's about protecting your freedom. So how do we reclaim it? The answer isn't working harder. It's creating better systems. One of the simplest systems is something I call the focus window. Choose one period during your day, perhaps 60 or 90 minutes. During that time, remove every possible distraction. Silence your phone. Close unnecessary tabs. Turn off notifications. Tell people you're unavailable. Then commit to working on only one important objective. Not 2, not 3, 1. At first, your mind will resist. You'll suddenly remember messages you wanted to check. Random thoughts will appear. You'll feel an almost automatic urge to reach for your phone. That's perfectly normal. Your brain has been trained to expect constant stimulation. Like any habit, it takes time to change. Imagine someone who has spent years eating sugary food every day. The first healthy meal feels strange. But after a few weeks, healthy food begins to taste normal. Focus works the same way. The more often you practice deep concentration, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, distraction starts feeling uncomfortable instead. Here's another powerful exercise. The next time you're tempted to switch tasks, pause for just 5 seconds. Ask yourself one question. Is this interruption more important than what I'm doing right now? Most of the time, the answer will be no. That tiny pause can save hours of lost attention. Now let's talk about something even more important than time. Energy. Imagine giving two people exactly 8 hours to cut down trees. One spends all 8 hours swinging a dull axe without stopping. The other spends 7 hours cutting and 1 hour sharpening the axe whenever it becomes dull. Who finishes with more trees? The answer seems obvious, yet many of us treat ourselves like the first woodcutter. We work continuously without renewing our energy. We skip breaks, ignore sleep, eat whatever is convenient, then wonder why our performance keeps declining. Your body isn't a machine. It's a living system. Every decision either adds energy or removes it. Productivity isn't only about managing time. It's about managing the quality of the person using that time. Think about your phone. Even the most expensive smartphone eventually needs charging. Imagine becoming frustrated because your battery reaches zero. That wouldn't make sense. Charging isn't a weakness. It's part of how the device works. Humans are exactly the same. Rest isn't laziness. Recovery isn't wasted time. Sleep isn't the enemy of success. They're essential parts of sustained performance. Many successful people have discovered that working longer often produces worse results. Instead, they work intensely for a limited period. Then they recover completely. This cycle repeats throughout the day. Professional athletes understand this better than almost anyone. No athlete trains at maximum intensity for 10 straight hours. They push hard, recover, push again, recover again. That rhythm allows them to improve instead of breaking down. Your brain follows the same principle. After long periods of concentration, mental energy naturally decreases. Ignoring that reality doesn't make it disappear. It simply lowers the quality of your thinking. So instead of asking, "How long can I force myself to work?" ask, "How can I protect my energy so every hour produces better results?" Sometimes the smartest thing you can do is stand up, stretch, drink water, walk outside for 10 minutes, look at the sky, take several slow breaths. Those few minutes often restore more focus than another hour of exhausted effort. There is another misunderstanding that quietly destroys productivity. People assume motivation comes first. They wait until they feel ready. They wait for inspiration, the perfect mood, the perfect moment. But successful people understand something different. Action creates motivation, not the other way around. Imagine trying to start a campfire. The first spark is difficult. You carefully arrange the wood, strike the match, protect the tiny flame. But once the fire grows, keeping it alive becomes much easier. Work follows the same pattern. Starting is the hardest part. Continuing becomes surprisingly easy. Whenever you feel resistance toward an important task, make a deal with yourself. Don't promise to finish it. Promise to begin. Just 5 minutes. Open the document. Write one sentence. Read one page. Solve one problem. Most of the time, those 5 minutes become 30. 30 becomes 60. Momentum quietly takes over, because your brain resists beginnings far more than it resists progress. Remember this simple truth. Perfection is the enemy of completion. The world rarely rewards perfect ideas that never leave your mind. It rewards useful work that actually gets finished. So start before you feel ready. Improve while moving, and trust that consistent action will always outperform endless preparation. Because every remarkable achievement you've ever admired began exactly the same way. One small decision, one focus, one courageous first step. The hardest part of any meaningful journey is rarely the work itself. It's staying consistent when nobody is watching. Think about learning to play the guitar. The first few days feel exciting. Every new chord feels like progress. But after a few weeks, improvement slows down. Your fingers hurt. You make mistakes. You begin wondering if you're actually getting better. This is the exact moment when most people quit. Not because they lack ability, but because they mistake slow progress for no progress. The same thing happens with productivity. People try a new habit for 3 days. They wake up early, plan their day, stay focused. Then one difficult morning arrives. They oversleep, miss their routine, feel disappointed, and immediately conclude, I guess this method doesn't work for me. But one imperfect day never destroys success. Giving up after one imperfect day does. Imagine planting a tiny seed. Would you dig it up every morning just to check if it has started growing? Of course not. You water it, protect it, trust the process. And one day, without realizing exactly when it happened, the first green leaf appears above the soil. Habits grow the same way. Their progress is invisible before it becomes obvious. That is why patience is one of the most underrated productivity skills. Many people expect dramatic transformation overnight. Real transformation happens quietly. One better decision today, another tomorrow, then another the next day. Months later, people call it an overnight success. But they never saw the hundreds of invisible choices that created it. Now let's talk about something that silently steals more dreams than failure itself. Procrastination. People often believe procrastination is simply laziness. But that's rarely true. In many cases, procrastination is actually fear wearing a different mask. Fear of making mistakes. Fear of being judged. Fear that the result won't be good enough. Fear that all your effort might still fail. Instead of facing those uncomfortable emotions, the brain looks for something easier. Scrolling social media, watching one more video, cleaning your desk, checking your email again. Suddenly, these activities feel incredibly important. Not because they matter, but because they temporarily protect us from discomfort. Imagine standing beside a cold swimming pool. Your brain immediately tells you how uncomfortable the water will feel. It suggests waiting another minute. Maybe the sun will come out. Maybe the water will warm up. But something interesting happens the moment you jump in. Within seconds, your body adjusts. The fear disappears. Work behaves exactly the same way. Thinking about starting is usually harder than actually starting. That is why one simple principle can completely change your life. Never focus on finishing. Focus on beginning. Suppose you need to write a 20-page report. Thinking about 20 pages feels overwhelming. Instead, tell yourself, I'll only write the first paragraph. Or perhaps, I'll only work for 10 minutes. The goal isn't to trick yourself. The goal is to reduce the mental resistance that prevents action. Once movement begins, momentum naturally follows. It's much easier to keep a moving bicycle balanced than one standing still. Your mind works the same way. Motion creates motivation. Here's another powerful strategy. Instead of asking, how can I make this task easier? Ask, how can I make it easier to start? Those are completely different questions. For example, if you want to read every evening, don't begin with an impossible goal of finishing 50 books this year. Place one book on your pillow every morning. When bedtime arrives, the decision has already been made. If you want to exercise tomorrow morning, prepare your clothes tonight. Fill your water bottle. Keep your shoes beside the door. Remove every excuse before it appears. Successful people don't rely on stronger willpower. They build environments that make good decisions easier. Imagine entering a kitchen filled with fresh fruit, vegetables, and healthy snacks. Making a healthy choice becomes natural. Now imagine entering another kitchen filled only with sweets and junk food. Suddenly discipline becomes much harder. The environment influences behavior more than we realize. Your workspace works exactly the same way. Look around your desk. Does it invite focus or distraction? Is your phone within arm's reach? Are dozens of browser tabs open? Is your workspace filled with things unrelated to your most important goal? Every unnecessary object competes for your attention. A clear desk often creates a clearer mind. That doesn't mean perfection. It means removing friction. Because every tiny obstacle gives procrastination another opportunity. Let's explore another hidden obstacle. Perfectionism. At first glance, perfectionism sounds like a strength. People proudly say, I'm a perfectionist. But often, perfectionism isn't about producing excellent work. It's about avoiding imperfect work. Imagine an artist who spends 5 years planning the perfect painting but never actually touches the canvas. Compare that to another artist who creates 100 paintings. Many will be average, some will fail, but a few will become masterpieces. Which artist truly improves? The second one, because excellence grows through repetition, not hesitation. Every expert you admire was once a beginner producing imperfect work. Every best-selling author once wrote terrible first drafts. Every successful entrepreneur once made embarrassing mistakes. Every confident speaker once felt nervous. Progress always comes before mastery. That's why it's far better to finish something imperfect than endlessly polish something unfinished. Remember this phrase whenever perfection begins slowing you down. Done creates opportunities. Perfect creates delays. There is another lesson successful people understand very well. They review their lives regularly. Imagine driving across an unfamiliar country without ever checking your map. Eventually you'll reach somewhere. But there's no guarantee it's where you wanted to go. Life is no different. Many people stay busy for years without ever asking whether they're moving in the right direction. That is why reflection matters. Spend a few minutes every evening asking yourself 3 simple questions. What was today's biggest success? What distracted me the most? What one thing can I improve tomorrow? These questions seem almost too simple. But, answered honestly every day, they become incredibly powerful. Small adjustments prevent big mistakes. A ship sailing across the ocean doesn't stay on course because it never drifts. It stays on course because the captain keeps making tiny corrections. Your life deserves the same attention. Don't wait until the end of the year to evaluate your progress. Adjust every day, every week, every month. Improvement becomes much easier when corrections are small. Now think about your calendar. Most people schedule meetings, appointments, deadlines, phone calls, but they never schedule time for thinking. And yet, thinking is often the activity that produces the greatest results. Some of history's greatest inventions weren't created during busy meetings. They appeared during quiet walks, moments of reflection, periods of uninterrupted thought. Never underestimate the value of silence. Your best ideas usually arrive after your mind has space to breathe. That brings us to another important truth. Busyness has become a status symbol. People proudly announce how busy they are, as if exhaustion were proof of importance. But imagine 2 builders. One spends 12 hours carrying bricks back and forth without a plan. The other spends 1 hour studying the blueprint before beginning construction. At sunset, which builder has made greater progress? Activity without direction wastes effort. Purpose multiplies effort. Being busy is easy. Being intentional requires courage. Sometimes the most productive thing you can do isn't adding another task. It's removing one. Saying no to unnecessary commitments. Declining distractions. Protecting your attention as if it were your most valuable possession. Because it is. Every time you say yes to something unimportant, you're quietly saying no to something that truly matters. Your future isn't built by what you dream about occasionally. It's built by what receives your attention every single day. So choose carefully, because your attention is writing the story of your life. One decision at a time. And once you learn to protect it, you'll discover something remarkable. You were never lacking time. You were simply giving your best hours away without realizing their value. The moment you reclaim those hours, your entire life begins to change. Sometimes the biggest obstacle standing between you and an extraordinary life isn't a lack of talent. It isn't a lack of intelligence. And it certainly isn't a lack of opportunity. Sometimes, it's simply that you've become available to everything. Someone asks for a favor. You immediately say yes. A new meeting appears on your calendar. You accept it. A friend sends a message. You stop working to reply. Another notification pops up. Without thinking, you open it. By the end of the day, you've spent your energy helping everyone else's priorities while your own dreams quietly waited in the background. And then you wonder why your biggest goals never seem to move forward. Here's a question that might change the way you think forever. Imagine someone gave you $10 million today. Would you allow strangers to take small amounts of that money? Probably not. You would protect it carefully. You would know exactly where it was going. You would think before spending even a small amount. Yet every single day, many people give away something far more valuable than money. They give away their attention. The difference is that money can be earned again. Time cannot. Once an hour has passed, no amount of success can buy it back. That's why learning to say no is not selfish. It's responsible. Every meaningful achievement requires sacrifice. When an Olympic athlete decides to train, they're also deciding not to spend that time doing hundreds of other things. When an entrepreneur starts a business, they're saying no to countless distractions. When a student chooses to study instead of scrolling endlessly through social media, they're making a decision about the future version of themselves. Every yes has a hidden no, and every no protects an important yes. The challenge is deciding which one deserves your attention. Let's imagine another story. Emma had recently started her own online business. She was excited, motivated, and willing to work hard. But after 6 months, nothing seemed to change. She was constantly busy. Her calendar was completely full. Yet her business barely grew. One evening she decided to review every hour of the previous week. She expected to find evidence of hard work. Instead, she found something surprising. Nearly half her time had disappeared into activities that felt productive but created almost no real value. Long phone conversations, unnecessary meetings, responding instantly to every message, watching videos that she convinced herself were research, helping people with problems they could easily solve themselves. She wasn't failing because she lacked discipline. She was failing because she never protected her priorities. The next Monday she made one simple rule. Before agreeing to anything, she asked herself one question. Will this move me closer to the life I'm trying to build? If the answer was no, she politely declined. At first it felt uncomfortable. She worried people would think she was rude. But something unexpected happened. People respected her more. Her schedule became lighter. Her stress decreased. Most importantly, the quality of her work improved dramatically. Because every important goal needs uninterrupted space to grow. Think about a young tree. When it's first planted, gardeners often place a fence around it. Not because the tree is weak forever, but because it needs protection while it's growing. Your goals deserve the same protection. Every unnecessary commitment is like someone leaning on that young tree before it has become strong enough. Boundaries aren't walls that keep people away. They're fences that protect what matters most. This idea becomes even more important when we talk about technology. Have you ever picked up your phone to check the time, only to realize 10 minutes later that you're watching random videos? It happens so naturally that we hardly notice. Technology itself isn't the enemy. The real danger is unconscious use. Imagine getting into a car without deciding where you're going. You simply drive wherever the roads take you. Hours later, you're surprised you haven't reached your destination. Using technology without intention creates the same result. Instead of asking, "How much time did I spend on my phone today?" ask a better question. "How much value did my phone create today?" Those are completely different conversations. Technology should serve your goals. Your goals should never serve technology. One simple habit can create a remarkable difference. Before unlocking your phone, decide exactly why you're picking it up. Maybe you're sending one message. Maybe you're checking your calendar. Maybe you're reading an important email. Once you've finished that purpose, put it away. Don't allow one intentional action to become 20 minutes of unconscious scrolling. Awareness is powerful, because you cannot change what you refuse to notice. Now let's shift our attention to something many people completely overlook: rest. For years, society has celebrated people who sacrifice sleep, who proudly say, "I only sleep 4 hours. I've been working all weekend. I never take vacations." It sounds impressive, until you examine the results. Imagine asking a professional race car driver to complete an important race without changing worn-out tires. No matter how skilled the driver is, the car eventually loses performance. Human beings aren't designed to operate at maximum intensity every hour of every day. Recovery is not the opposite of productivity. Recovery is part of productivity. Sleep strengthens memory. Rest restores attention. Exercise improves thinking. Healthy food fuels better decisions. Your body and your mind are partners. Ignoring one eventually weakens the other. Think about the days when you've slept well. You notice details more quickly. You solve problems with less frustration. You stay patient during difficult conversations. Now compare that with days when you're exhausted. Small problems feel enormous. Simple decisions become difficult. Your attention disappears. The same task suddenly takes twice as long. Nothing changed except your energy. That's why successful people don't just manage schedules. They manage themselves. They understand that high performance begins long before they sit down to work. It begins with how they sleep, what they eat, how they move, what they allow into their minds. Imagine trying to build a beautiful house on a weak foundation. Eventually, cracks begin to appear. Your daily habits are the foundation of your future. Strong habits create strong results. Weak habits create constant struggle. This leads us to one final idea before we bring everything together. Most people believe confidence comes after success. But reality often works the other way around. Confidence grows every time you keep a promise to yourself. You planned to wake up early. And you did. Confidence grows. You promised yourself 30 minutes of focused work. You completed it. Confidence grows again. You committed to reading every evening. Week after week you remained consistent. Your identity begins to change. Eventually you stop saying, "I'm trying to become productive." Instead you begin saying, "I am someone who finishes what I start." That small shift changes everything. Because behavior follows identity. If you believe you're someone who values focus, protecting your attention becomes natural. If you believe you're someone who keeps promises, consistency becomes easier. Your life is always moving toward the story you believe about yourself. So choose that story carefully. Don't define yourself by your worst day. Define yourself by the person you're becoming through your daily actions. Every focused hour, every completed task, every distraction you choose to ignore, every promise you keep, they're all casting votes for the future version of yourself. And one day, without even realizing when it happened, you'll look back at the person you used to be and barely recognize them. Because real transformation never happens all at once. It happens quietly. One intentional decision, one focused morning, one disciplined evening, one ordinary day at a time. And those ordinary days eventually create an extraordinary life. The most important lesson about productivity isn't hidden inside a complicated system. It isn't buried inside an expensive course. And it certainly isn't reserved for a handful of extraordinary people. It's surprisingly simple. Your life becomes whatever you repeatedly give your attention to. If your attention is constantly pulled toward distractions, your life slowly fills with unfinished goals. If your attention is invested in meaningful work, meaningful relationships, and continuous growth, your life begins to reflect those choices. Every single day, you're writing your future. Not with a pen, but with your habits. Imagine two friends graduating from college on the same day. They have similar intelligence, similar opportunities, similar dreams. 5 years later, one has built a successful career, developed valuable skills, maintained good health, and enjoys a balanced personal life. The other feels stuck, always busy, always tired, always promising that next month will finally be different. What happened? Most people assume the first person was simply more talented. But when you look closely, the difference usually comes down to hundreds of tiny decisions. One chose to read instead of endlessly scrolling. One protected their mornings instead of reacting to every notification. One learned to say no without feeling guilty. One treated sleep as an investment instead of an inconvenience. None of these decisions looked life-changing on their own. But together, they created two completely different futures. Never underestimate the power of ordinary days. Because extraordinary lives are simply collections of ordinary days lived intentionally. Think about a sculptor standing in front of a massive block of marble. The finished masterpiece isn't created in one giant strike. It's shaped by thousands of careful, patient cuts. Every small adjustment reveals a little more beauty. Your character develops exactly the same way. Every focused hour strengthens discipline. Every difficult decision builds confidence. Every promise you keep to yourself strengthens trust in your own abilities. People often ask, what's the secret to staying productive forever? The answer may disappoint them. There isn't one, because productivity isn't a destination. It's a relationship. Just like physical fitness, you don't exercise for 1 month and remain healthy. You don't eat one healthy meal and solve your nutrition for life. You continue showing up, again, and again, and again. The same applies to your focus. Some mornings you'll feel unstoppable. Ideas will flow naturally. Your energy will be high. Everything seems easy. Other days will feel completely different. Your concentration will disappear. Simple tasks will feel difficult. Motivation will be nowhere to be found. Those difficult days don't mean you've failed. They simply mean you're human. The goal was never perfection. The goal was consistency. Whenever life becomes overwhelming, return to the basics. Ask yourself, what is the single most important thing I can do today? Have I protected enough time to do it without distractions? Am I taking care of my energy, not just my schedule? Am I spending more time creating than consuming? Am I moving closer to the person I want to become? These questions act like a compass. They won't remove every obstacle, but they'll keep you moving in the right direction. There's one final story I'd like to leave with you. An old craftsman was once asked how he had built such an extraordinary reputation over the years. People admired his work. They respected his discipline. They wondered how he stayed motivated for decades. He smiled and replied, "I never tried to build a great career. I only tried to do today's work well." At first, that answer sounded too simple. But the longer people thought about it, the deeper its meaning became. Great careers are built one day at a time. Great businesses are built one customer at a time. Great books are written one page at a time. Great relationships grow through one meaningful conversation at a time. And great lives are built through one intentional day at a time. You don't need to change your entire life tomorrow morning. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need endless motivation. You simply need the courage to take the next meaningful step. Maybe that means waking up 30 minutes earlier. Maybe it means turning your phone off while you work. Maybe it means finally starting the project you've been postponing for months. Maybe it means spending more time with the people who matter most. Whatever your next step is, take it, because the perfect time you're waiting for doesn't exist. The future isn't created someday. It's created today. The person you'll become 5 years from now is quietly being shaped by the decisions you make after finishing this audiobook. Will you continue living on autopilot? Or will you begin living with intention? Will distractions continue deciding your future? Or will your priorities finally take control? That decision belongs to no one else. It belongs to you. As we come to the end of this journey, remember these timeless principles. Choose your priorities before the world chooses them for you. Focus deeply instead of trying to do everything at once. Protect your attention because it is your greatest asset. Respect your energy through proper rest, movement, and healthy habits. Start before you feel ready. Progress matters more than perfection. Review your life regularly and improve a little every day. Say yes to what truly matters and have the courage to say no to everything that doesn't. And above all, remember that productivity is not about squeezing more work into your day. It's about creating more meaning in your life. Because success isn't measured by how busy you are. It's measured by whether you're spending your time on the things that truly matter. Thank you for spending your valuable time with Volume and Vision. If this audiobook inspired you, taught you something new, or encouraged you to look at your life differently, don't let that inspiration end here. Choose one idea from today's journey and put it into action within the next 24 hours. Small actions, repeated consistently, create extraordinary results. If you enjoyed this summary and want more life-changing books explained in simple, practical English, make sure to subscribe to Volume and Vision and turn on notifications so you never miss our next audiobook. And before you leave, share your thoughts in the comments. Which productivity habit are you going to start today? Your answer might inspire someone else to begin their own journey. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and remember, your greatest investment is not your money. It is your attention. Spend it wisely, and it will build the life you've always imagined.